All right, welcome back to yet another episode of the sci-fi. No, we're not sci-fi shenanigans. You'd think after 2 years I'd get this right. Welcome back for another episode of the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king. Sorry about that. The sky is the limit and space is the place. The podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to say sorry about the me dying and my lungs hacking up, but I promise I feel fine. I'm getting over everything. And we thought about recording our intro, dear listeners, so it was perfect every time. But then it wasn't us. So there's beauty in the imperfection. That's what they tell us at the shrink's office, right? So instead, we're just going to power through, and you can laugh with us or at us. We don't care. But now, Mr. DP Brown, can you introduce yourselves to our listeners and viewers?
My name is DP Brown. I'm a writer, / creator. My creation is The Theme of Thieves. I'm also a children's book writer, Sammy and Sissy, protecting people. So, yep, that's basically what I do. I'm a writer, creator of comic books.
All right. And the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found them. So, DP came to us through Marvin Wynn, who sent a lot of comic book industry, indie comic book people our way because we were happy to host them. And so they could always use more places to talk about their products. Oh, yeah. So it's been a fun dive into all things picture books. I know you sent all the hate mail. You'll get a kick out of this. So my oldest son likes to read anime or manga, excuse me. Anime's the cartoons. So we're at the store, the Barnes and Noble, and I'm just going through since I started writing and doing the podcast, and I'm going through the science fiction aisle, and I'm looking at everyone I've actually met in person. I'm like, oh, I know that person. It's weird when you know the people now, right?
Right.
And so he's over there looking at all the different books, and I finally walked over there, and there's a bunch of other parents just standing around watching their kids go through all these to pick the book they want. I'm like, are you done picking your comic book yet? Oh. And all of them just turned, and it was like the feral children in like a graphic novel about zombies or something. They all just sort of stared at you, and you could almost hear the music at like the OK Corral, and they just look at you. Oh, they get really upset if you mix up comic book and graphic novel and manga.
You got to define it correctly and everything, or else you get the side eyes.
Yeah, you got the side eye, and all the parents were just laughing.
Oh, that is classic.
And I knew I would get that reaction too. It's just fun tweaking all the little kids that got super passionate about their nerds or whatever.
And like, how they all got our thing, right? Comic book and everything, book and everything. Like it's a bad word too,
I don't understand the difference. Nick has tried to explain it to me. Our co-host Nick Garber runs Apogee Comics and is a creator himself. And he's tried to patiently explain it to me, but it never makes sense to me. It's like it's got pictures, it works comic, like. But anyway, I've actually had some creators get mad when I suggested that like the comics that came in the gum back in the day, if you remember that, like those aren't real comics. And I'm like, well, it's got pictures, right? With words.
Yep.
It's comic.
Picture balloons and bubble balloons and everything, word balloons and stuff. I mean, it's a comic book, so
So did you remember those Bazooka Joe?
Yeah. I used to read them all the time when I got.
Yeah. Did you count those as comics, or they were just funnies or what?
So that's a good question. While I did read them, I mean, I guess I didn't really consider them comics. Didn't really define it as that. But I mean, it was like you said, technically they are comics and stuff. But when you think of comics, you think of like the 6 by 10.2 25 inches and everything. But yeah, those are like little comics. I mean, would you consider like newspaper stuff comics and stuff? I mean, it's in a newspaper. I mean, it has pictures. I
would consider those comic strips. Yeah. I grew up reading the art. Is it Archie comics? Yeah. My parents had those around all the time. My favorite though, and ironically, I got it the day I took my driver's test at 15. And the Bazooka Joe comic, because it was cheap gum, right? You get it for a penny. And you open it, and the comic that day was the kid was sitting in a car, and the driving instructor was asking him, like, what do you do if your brakes fail on the highway? And his answer still sticks with me, and he said, try to hit something cheap.
Oh.
And just the idea that I found that the day that I was like taking my driver's test couldn't have been more perfect.
That is funny.
I did not use that answer, by the way, with the driver's ed. They didn't have a sense of humor.
Yeah, what I couldn't stand with the Bazooka Joes is like, when you got one, you read a fresh one, and then of course you buy another one, at a different, couple weeks down the line, it's the same comic and everything.
Oh yeah.
I mean, okay, let me buy something new. or putting
So I
something.
played Little League, so we would always get them because they were at the concession stand,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kill our teeth with that gum that was super hard. But that was back when you used to get a snuff can looking thing, but it was powdered beef jerky, so you could pretend like you were doing dip.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was the thing, and the candy cigarettes. Like,
I
it was a
remember.
different time in the 80s.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Classic '80s stuff.
Yeah, the
Concession.
beef jerky was good too.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
this point, I don't need to pretend it's snuff. I just like good beef jerky. So give it to me. But all right, so this wouldn't be the blasters and blades if I didn't ask you the religion question. So, Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Ooh, so I just recently, to be honest, got into like Star Wars, hardcore, because I wasn't a big Star Wars fan, but I used to love Firefly. That when that came on, I was, super into that. And when the Firefly movie came out to sort of end everything and everything, I was like super into that. Probably was one of the only two in the movie theater to go actually see that as a feature film and stuff. But I mean, I was into it.
Yeah, I dig it. And because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades, so Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, or Wheel of Time?
Game of Thrones.
Oh, you like the grimdark, or what is it about Game of Thrones that speaks to you?
Well, okay. So the show, I'm a big Lost fan. So anything that's real, complex, as far as like story wise, and creates multiple layers for characters, I'm like super into. And Game of Thrones was like that for me, like big time. Where they had me at the very beginning, scene with the White Walkers, and
Yeah,
then the teaser that throughout the whole series just kept me hooked. So as that fantasy element came into like the picture, mixed with like sort of like real world type stuff, if you want to call it that, within like the Game of Thrones, the tease of like the White Walkers coming, or White Walkers are coming. When are they going to come? That just kept me like throughout like the whole series and everything. So I'm a big Night King fan.
okay. So we like the fantastical and the scientific here at the Blasters and Blades, but what was your first love, sci-fi or fantasy?
Sci-fi, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I've,
what
I've
was your first memory of that?
Well, I mean, if you consider comics, sci-fi, which is technically what it is, my first comic was Spider-Man, with like
Okay.
Scorpion on the cover, so that was my first exposure to like really reading, science fiction, getting into that type of stuff. So seeing a guy in a spider suit, climbing walls and everything, I'd never seen that before. And that was like around 4 or 5 years old when my father handed me my first comic, and it just had me from there. From there, I was all into like real world like science fiction type stuff. So anything that had to do with like magic or fantasy or like creatures, I wasn't really into. I was more into like the science based fiction. So the comic book stuff, that really got me into it.
Did you read any of the GI Joe comics,
Oh
or
yeah,
the
oh
was
yeah.
it Thundercats? Any of those that were out back in the day?
I mean,
Yeah,
you're talking to an '80s maniac right here. GI Joe,
yeah,
Transformers, Thundercats, Silverhawks.
yeah. I like
He-Man.
the Silverhawks. That was good.
Yeah.
They did a oh, was it Mikey Mason has this thing where he does like all the intros to all the different cartoons from the 80s, and
Oh,
you're supposed to try to guess how many of them, and I got every one. I'm like, I remember.
oh man, the mask. I mean, I was super into it all. So yeah, yeah. I was deep, had all the toys and everything, and yeah, yeah. You're talking to an '80s maniac right here.
I didn't. So I for GI Joe at least I got the figures, but I never got like the big bases or the aircraft carrier because that shit was just hella expensive,
Oh
and my
yeah,
parents weren't made of money.
no, yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't have like the big stuff. All I got was like the figures and stuff too.
And
So
occasionally the little vehicles. Yeah,
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
but
Transformer
when
stuff, I was I got a couple big toys of that, but nothing like Metroplex or anything like that.
so Transformers never really did it for me. Like I'd watch the cartoons,
Man.
but like I liked GI Joe. I liked like Voltron and Silver Surfer. But like I just don't know, something about the whole transforming thing just seemed too gimmicky to me at the time.
Oh, really? Oh
So I
man.
never got into it. But there were a lot of other campy stuff that I was perfectly happy to hit the I believe button for. It's
Oh,
weird how your mind works. Like,
yeah.
you'll believe in this fire breathing dragon, but the fact that the horse was green and it's a bridge too far, right? Like it's just where people's lines are. It amuses me.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, So what is it about speculative fiction writ large? So that's sci-fi, fantasy, horror, all of the things. What is it about that field that you love?
Well, I mean, I guess putting myself into a different world from like the world that I'm actually, immersed in, like everyday life and everything. Growing up, I was like to myself, did a lot of drawing and everything. Or, ironically, I don't do a lot of it today. I'm more or less right. But, I did a lot of drawing, drawing of cartoons, different characters. I started making up characters as well. But I like the fact that you could go into a world where nothing is concrete. There's a beginning, middle and an end, and you can have an adventure for like 20 minutes if you're reading a comic, or a half an hour if you're watching a cartoon, or if you're watching a movie, a couple hours. You can get into that world, get away from what you're used to, whether it's like your brother or your sister or your your parents or whatever, just everyday regular life. Get into that world and just immerse yourself deep into it until it's over, and then do it all over again. So I was really into fiction, a lot, a lot, and still am. So I mean, I'm diehard into like speculative fiction.
So that's one of the things everyone's like, oh, I've known I want to be a writer from a young age. And like, I think about it like, I did occasionally, like I tried to write an epic poem in high school and a novel in like middle school, and they were horrible. Like, you spent like 5 pages doing the intro, setting everything up, and then you get bored with it and you end the book in like 2 sentences. Like that was me. And the epic poem was just, I'm glad the teacher burned it. I hope she burned it. If she sells it on eBay, I'm gonna be very mad. Um, but like other than that, like I was too busy writing school papers to really write. But
Hmm.
looking back on it, like every time the episode or the story ended on the stuff you like, you'd
Hmm.
almost picture it in your head with you in the story and to
Yeah,
keep it going.
yeah,
And maybe not you, but like an idealized version of you. So super,
yeah,
like a lot better shape, a lot faster, a lot stronger,
yeah,
whatever. And
yeah.
I realized that's essentially storytelling. I just never wrote it down or told anybody.
Exactly. That's the purpose of toys and stuff too. You play,
Yeah.
toys and watch the TV shows and everything. You when that half an hour is over at GI Joe, you take out your GI Joe toys and start like continuing like whatever the episode that you watch, you can start continuing and making up stories on your own. And yeah, me and my brothers was like real into that. So yeah. I mean, I could totally appreciate that.
The one thing that stinks though is the barrier to entry for merchandising makes it such that action figures are something like only like the super yuppie rich people can collect anymore. Like the idea that kids just get them. Like when you look at one figure is like $25. I'm like, how am I supposed to get a kid a set to play with? At
I
those prices.
I don't know what kids are like super into nowadays. I mean, I see that a lot of them play like video games. I guess that's a way of like immersing yourself into like fantasy fiction or what have you. But as far as the toys and stuff, I got a daughter. She plays with a lot of like dolls and stuff like that. So I can see that. But as far as like these kids and these expensive toys, I don't know how if they do. I don't know how parents do it. I mean, they are
Yeah,
like
it's
super
expensive.
expensive. Yeah.
The trick is you wait for them to go on sale after the various latest movie flops, and then you can buy them for like
Yeah.
25 cents each.
Right.
But that's
Right.
not a good business model if you want the industry you love to stick around.
No, no, no. But I mean, they make money somehow. I mean, every time a Batman movie comes out, I mean, Batman toy sales go through like the roof and stuff. So, however they do it, and whoever they're marketing to that buys it, I mean, they're doing their work.
Yes, they bank on nostalgia, and then because they don't want to pay rights holders with the IP, they
Mhm.
always just revisit existing properties so that way they don't have to pay as much to the creators. It's my
Right.
guess on why they do it. It's pure speculation, but it's like, if you want representation of fill in the blank group, and I'm okay with all of that,
Hmm.
my answer has always been create new characters because the world needs more. But
Yeah.
they never want to do that because if you create the next big thing, then they got to pay you a lot more, right?
Well,
Whereas if you just merchandise Thor again for the billionth time,
I mean, if you talk to a corporation, their easiest thing is let's try to make the most money the easiest way possible. You
yeah,
know, until let somebody else do the work as far as like creating or making it popular or whatever. We don't want to do the work. That corporation per se doesn't want to do that work. They're there to make money and please their shareholders at the end of the day. So you could talk about them trying to create like new characters. While it's fine in theory and stuff, at the same time they're answering to like stakeholders and stuff. So it's kind of a hard. That's why me as an independent creator, maybe I'm doing their work for them.
But then when they look
Create
to
those new
license things,
characters and everything.
they almost never go to the independent creators with, rich properties to give them everything they say they're looking for.
Yeah.
Like, we want content that speaks to this audience. Like, great,
Mhm.
they should have it. More is always good. And
Yeah. Yeah.
insert group of the week. And I'm not saying that as a derogatory thing, but then they, instead of going for that, they're just like, well, we're just going to flip the race, gender, age, whatever of this
Mhm.
existing character. I'm like, no, no, no. They deserve a rich backstory that isn't just pigeonholing it. Like, give them what they're like, it bugs me a little bit. That's why. Have you familiar with the YouTube channel Dust?
No. Mm-mm.
They're an independent film company that makes sci-fi films, sometimes better than what's coming out of Hollywood. They do it in 15 to 20-minute shorts, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
Some of it's graphic cartoon, I think you call it, like
Okay.
not quite Pixar cartoon, but like actual. Um, I don't know how you describe it, but it's some of it's cartoon, some of it's real life,
Okay.
with
Like
effects. But
CGI animation.
yeah, some of that stuff they put out is amazing.
Oh wow. Okay. I gotta
I
check
get everybody who loves like science fiction stuff
that out.
hooked on that channel. I'm like,
Mhm.
we're all like fiending, waiting for the next update. And some of it's 15-minute story and that's it. But it's
Really?
all new creators, and it's just like it shows what's possible if you get just a little bit of a budget that you could do without having to rely on Hollywood. Because I think independent creators, it's our time to shine. And so this
Yeah.
is the time where that kind of stuff can finally happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
So
not cheap to do though. So I mean, to come
no,
up with like something from like the ground up and everything, brand new, nobody ever heard of. Me, I'm not working with like IP. I'm creating my own IP, so I have to go out there.
you got to
Not
find the
only
audience.
yeah, find not only do that, but I have to find a budget, and where does the budget come from? If I'm working like a regular job, if I really want to do this, which is what I did, I saved my money to actually, put this stuff out there because I believed in it so much. I didn't want to go to like DC Comics or, Marvel to write their characters and everything. I wanted to actually, make something up on my own and actually, find an audience out there. And if the audience considers what I do a good thing, then I know, I'm gonna keep on doing it and reinvest my money, into doing that, and just keep the cycle going and stuff. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I
There's
guess that's what a business does. If a small business and everything, but yeah,
That's one of the things we talked with Marvin Lynn about, and we've talked about this before show with you and with I'm drawing a blank, Brandon from Gallows Comics, is we want to do an actual indie author, and I'm saying this during the show so the audience can hear. We want to do like an indie comic creator sort of fireside chat because there's so much that could be talked about, but there's so much room for someone like there's comic book review channels on YouTube that do nothing but tear apart the crappy writing in
hmm
like DC and Marvel. I'm like, start reading the good stuff and showing people about all the independent comics. If you're truly passionate about comics, like expose what's out there instead of just complaining about the same old. Like
but
at a
but but
certain point in time,
why they do that? They do that because they know who's going to come to those channels because you're talking about DC and Marvel, which is a big two. You start talking about independent creators, which is fine in theory. Their stuff is not as known as DC and Marvel stuff. So in order to draw the subscribers to their channel, what do they have to talk about? Now, like you said, if they start intermingling like independent stuff with the Marvel and DC stuff, then that maybe that might get that still draws in like your audience and everything. But to do it all like independent stuff, I don't know if that'll be a really great thing for their audience or channel and stuff. Um, Maybe they should think about trying different avenues to create that audience. And at the end of the day, like YouTubers, I mean, they you have to sell yourself in order to have a good channel. People
yeah,
talk about the same stuff on a lot of channels all the time, but in order to be a good YouTuber or just video blog podcaster and everything, you're selling yourself.
yeah. So the solution to that though is Sparky and I. He's a friend of the show. I run some D&D stuff, well, role playing stuff with him. And one of the things we were talking about is everyone wants to complain about the state of insert industry, but nobody actually wants to do the things necessary to change it. Is so vote with your money. If you think X corporation hates you because you're left or hates you because you're right or whatever, and I'm not taking a stance on any of your politics. I really don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Like vote with your feet. Like go where they want you or where they don't care about your politics and they just want to tell you a good story and start investing there because at a
Right.
certain point in time if you really hate Star Wars, and we'll use that because there's some people that really hate the direction it's going, not because of the politics, but because some of the lazy writing, and they've sort of abandoned the canon that some people get really sentimentally attached to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then go to the places where they like you, where they
Right.
want you to enjoy their products, and start supporting that. But you can't complain that, oh, there's nothing I like, and then when there is stuff that's new, oh, I don't want to try that. That's new. At a certain
Yeah.
point in time, you have to
Yeah.
either quit
Expand your
complaining
horizon.
or
Yeah.
stop crying wolf, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I mean,
that's been
it's a bunch of good stuff out there. Us independent creators are there. Support us. Try us out at least. At the very least, you try us out, and if you don't like it, then you don't have to continue. But it's a bunch of different stuff, and like you said, you can't keep complaining if you're mixing yourself in the same bowl, every time.
it's like if you do the same thing over and over again, you can't really be shocked when you get the same results. It's sort of
Exactly.
the analogy I guess we're using. And so that's why I trying to push some of the indie content out there.
Appreciate
And just in general, I do that with some of the games too, because like if you think these companies, don't like you as fans, and some of the bigger companies have been caught on hot mics saying some very derogatory things about their customers. A certain coffee company comes to mind. It's like, well, if you really don't like that, then stop giving them your money and go somewhere that doesn't hate you,
you. Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
know?
Yep. Yep.
So, but all right. So let's get back on track. We're talking about you as a nerd right now. So, how did your love of speculative fiction transition into you writing your own stories in the comic book space? Or did you start with the kids' books?
So I'm like I said, I wrote I drew comics and stuff since I was like a little since I was younger and everything. Nothing like professional or anything like that, but I was really into like the artwork and doing like some stuff, shopping stuff to like Marvel and DC, way back in like the late 80s, 90s and everything. Yeah, 90s and but as far as like what led me to that the fact that I saw an opportunity that that DC and Marvel and maybe I shouldn't say to a degree Image because they produce like a variety of different content and everything, but mainly DC and Marvel. While I do like a lot of their stuff, I didn't want to do anything that was like related to like what people see as superheroes and stuff. There's so many independent artists and stuff that put a superhero, like we got so many superheroes out here. I don't know what can you really do different with it. So basically led me to like creating the Theme of Thieves. Just something different. While my guy, the guy in the red suit, he's not a superhero per se, but he is like science fiction time traveler and everything. So we'll find out a little bit more as time goes on, as issues goes on, as far as his background, as far as what he can do and what he does. But I just wanted to do something different from what I was seeing, like, with like the main two, and just, a lot of independent creators just doing like the recycling the whole superhero, Peter Parker type of origin type stuff.
So one of the things you get the benefit of with these newer comics and content in general, not just comics, just new franchises, is from the indie side, is you don't have 100 years or like some of these of lore that you have to try to understand to understand the story because it's fresh,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is the benefit. Sometimes just starting something new, like we'll use David Weber for instance. I don't know if you read his novels. He writes the Honor Harrington military sci-fi stuff.
Okay.
Um, and there are people that won't start his series now because he's on like book 100 or something crazy. It's not really. I think it's like 30, but I mean, at a certain point in time, you got so much to read to catch up that it can be
Yeah.
intimidating.
Yeah.
And so for someone coming new, it seems like these new franchises where you've only got to read 6 comics to catch up or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
perfect way to do it.
Well, I mean, the thing about putting some fresh out is that everybody's not going to be into it, but you got some people that are. When I do my conventions and sell out my conventions and everything, I have a sign out front like, "Are you into like mystery? Are you into a good time travel mystery comic?" So I have that right in the front of my table. So usually, I'm not calling a lot of people over to the table unless I catch their eye and they want to talk and everything. But if someone sees that, they come over to my table and ask me, okay, well, what do you got here? And then I go through my whole spiel and pitch and everything about what Theme of Thieves is about. But yeah, I mean, you got this way of going about things that's a lot different from what other people do.
Okay. So what is your background? Are you a trained historian or just a history nerd, or what made you pick time travel?
I'm a big Lost fan.
Okay.
So I was really super into Lost. I'm a big Back to the Future fan. I'm a big Quantum Leap fan, So
Scott
I've been
Bakula.
oh yeah, Ziggy and everything. Oh man. But yeah, I was into those TV shows and comic book stuff a lot. Time travel it's always been interesting to me. Anything that has to do with time travel, Time Traveler's Wife, I'm thinking of just a movie off the top of my head. Anything that has to do with going back in time, maybe changing history or being a part of history or whatever, going back and seeing how that connects. I've always been interested on the theories that surround that. So yeah, that sort of put me into this mode of actually doing a comic, coming up with a story that actually has those elements into it, and see if I can try my hand in a whole time traveling genre.
Okay, that's a good enough reason. So many authors will let their own real life experiences influence the way they tell stories. So were there any specific formidable moments that shaped the way you create content?
um So I would say my characters, I knew I'm thinking a lot about what I knew from some kids in high school and some of their experiences of what I'm sort of adapting, per se. Um my experience in high school was a different thing. I was like the loner guy, the comic book guy, and back in the 80s, 90s, as you could probably know yourself and everything, comics weren't that popular. I mean, you was a straight nerd if you were super into comics and bringing them to school and all that stuff. So you had to really deal with individuals who would make fun of if you weren't the in crowd or the popular crowd and everything. So a lot of my main characters are based in the teenage high school range and everything, and I'm telling some of the stories. We're having them go through some situations that I've seen happen that may have happened to me, in school. And and the sort of living out of the fantasy of what could have happened had it been different back in high school. So maybe I'm carrying some high school trauma with me, into adulthood. But I mean, it's still, good fiction if people consider it that way.
Okay, so let's transition from the writing side and talk about things from a fan angle. So have you got any cool fan art or cosplay of your characters yet?
So there was a cosplay of the man in a red suit that was done a couple years back. You can actually probably see it in my Instagram. If you
And
go to
we'll link to that in the show notes.
yep. Go to my Instagram. It's a couple pictures that was done, and this was back before I really had the character down and everything. So I thought that was pretty cool. That was fashioned that way as far as the cosplay and stuff. But I mean, I've gotten a few people asking me if they was okay if they did fan art of my stuff. So since my book is still relatively new, I'm waiting to see how that comes back. So I'm slowly gaining popularity, if you want to call it that. Building my audience and everything, and I've gotten a great response so far. So those type of things are coming.
Okay. And if he gets any of that he can share, we will get him to put it in his newsletter. So all you got to do is follow his newsletter because those things are important, people, and you'll be able to do it. And we'll link all that in the show notes. So,
Yep.
has anyone ever asked for your autograph since you started creating content?
Yeah, all the time, all the time. So every time I'm at a convention and everything, and I sell one of my books and everything, that's the first thing that they ask me to do is like autographing and everything. So when I do my Kickstarters, I do offer a section for autographing and everything. But generally, if I'm selling my comic and people come back and read it and say that they like it and everything, then yeah, they end up asking me for the autograph and stuff. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm out in public and see some people see me in my cowboy hat and glasses at him asking for an autograph. I haven't gotten to that level yet, but it'll come.
I've got faith. So, what was the first time anybody asked for your autograph like?
Oh, it was a good feeling. That was when I did my first convention selling my work, which was like last year. So that's when the first issue came out last year, and somebody actually, you know what? The thought didn't even occur to me to give somebody the autograph my book until they actually asked for it. If you could believe that, you know. So when I sold my first book and someone asked me for my autograph, it just made me feel super good. That okay, I actually accomplished something. It took me it actually brought me it humbled me down to where I looked at the book and I was like, okay, I actually created this. This came from my brain, and I actually wrote this. I gave it to an artist, put it together, and was able to actually get it printed, put it, and here I am at a convention selling it, and someone is asking for my autograph. That's like a dream come true. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah, you can't beat that. So, have you ever seen anybody out in public reading your books?
Funny story, not actually reading my books, but I was at a convention, selling my first book and everything. And someone bought my book, autographed it and everything. And then about an hour later, they came back asking for the second issue, saying that they read the first issue and was excited to get the second issue. So I was like taken aback. I was like, you read it that quick? Just to come back and ask for like the second issue, and he was just gushing on how much he really liked the book and everything. And it's stuff like that that makes me feel like that doing this is worth it because it's not cheap. Doing this thing, in a self-publishing independent route, it's not a cheap thing to do. But when you meet fans like that and they come back and say they like what you did, that means that, you should keep going on that direction and hopefully get a lot more fans just like that. So my responsibility is to tap into as many fans as how he was, and I'll find my audience. Basically, I'm on the hunt for my people.
Okay. So, what's the weirdest or funny? Oh, that was the weirdest or funniest, I would bet. Can't really trump that. All right. So, now we are going to talk about everything you've written. So, you mentioned you just started, but other than um, the theme of thieves, and what else have you written?
I wrote a children's book called Sammy and Sissy Protecting People. It was about, basically, I wrote it during like the pandemic and everything. But basically, I started writing the book as a way to, uh, my mother, she did like all the artwork. She passed away in December 2020.
I'm
And she
sorry.
left behind like, a lot of the artwork, for it to go into the book. Self-published that like about a couple years ago. But one of her last wishes was to have a children's book done because she always wanted a children's book but done. So, so we decided, to get that done, and she was fortunately able to, get the artwork done just before she passed. But she told me that she didn't care how it came out. She was just glad that it was being done finally, And I mean, I just regret to this day that we just never did it sooner. But we ended up like self-publishing it through like Kickstarter, and it's on like Amazon right now. Got like a decent response and everything. That that I'm planning on doing like a Sammy and Sissy series on some other artwork that she left as well. So that should be coming out like sometime next year.
Okay. Well, obviously, that all sounds fascinating, but we're here to talk about your comics, which we've hinted at. So, why don't we talk about the theme of thieves? So, where did the premise for this universe come from?
So the theme of thieves is about two teens and a mysterious being that's traveling through time, and they're trying to solve a mystery of why people are disappearing in the present. So I'm a big time traveler fan, as you guys already know, as we just said. So another thing that sort of like shook me a bit was like I'm not sure what happened like a few years ago, but I was in a setting to where I looked around and just imagined people just disappearing. So in my world, people randomly disappear, and it's been happening since like the 1700s. Okay, so there's no rhyme or reason why this happens. It hasn't been discovered, how it happens. It just they people just know that this thing happens, and it's a way of life. Excuse me. People can just randomly disappear, like if you was having like dinner with your loved one, and then all of a sudden mid conversation they're gone. That's it. So whereas death, you have like closure, you have like the funeral, burial, casket, and everything. With this thing, it's still it's a way of life, all the way up until like the 2000s and everything. It's a way of life to where are people are just sort of tense, to the point where this thing that has been happening for so long, it's been happening more and more and more, as like, time goes by. So I'm dealing with a world of like escalation where this, disappearance happens, and it affects politics, it affects religion, it affects culture and everything. So my book sort of like, goes into all that. In the meantime, our heroes are traveling through time trying to find out why this thing is happening so much.
All right. Well, before we dig too deeply into this story, we're going to take a moment where we pause for a commercial interlude and we shamelessly shill for the man.
Fugitive federal agents Sebastian Vickery and Ingrid Castine, both sensitive to the ghosts that haunt the modern Los Angeles freeways, side streets, and alleys, are plunged into the supernatural secrets of the vast city and its history when a ghost-addicted Silicon Valley guru seeks to draw the lost souls of 1 million Angelinos into the creation of a predatory world god. Vickery and Castine may be old hands at dealing with the spirit world, but they've never been in a pursuit so deadly with the stakes so high. Forced Perspectives by Tim Powers from Baen Books at baenbooks.com.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And we appreciate the patronage. But for now, we are back with Mr. D.P. Brown, and we are going to talk about the theme of thieves. But before we do that, I'm going to share the book cover, and we're going to talk about some of the art that we can expect from this glorious comic. So first, let's look at one of the covers, which is glorious. It's so full screen that I don't even have to zoom, which is nice. But so we've got the man in red. Is there a reason that you made him almost like a shadow?
I mean, he's supposed to be mysterious. The guy is like, we're trying to figure out who he is, why, what this being is. So, is he like, human? Is he alien? What exactly is he? Why is he able to travel through time? Why is he traveling through time? But yeah, as far as like the whole shadow thing, he's meant to be sort of like a scary type of thing. He's been to the point where in some time periods he's entered into like kids' lives, and they dubbed him as the crazy man. Funny enough, and they made like a whole song of him and everything, and this song has been like reverberating and like kids passed down from like different generations, like in my history and everything. But I just wanted to make him like super mysterious.
So is there any similarity in the way the Slender Man legends go that you hear about?
Yeah, you know what? I was sort of concerned about that because he does look, in the Slender Man, vein and everything. But obviously, he's not Slender Man. So it's the same concept. This guy in the suit with with the tie and everything. But nothing that has to do with Slender Man or that type of scary. He's going to get you type of thing. He's not like a Freddy Krueger or a Jason or anything like that. He's not that type. But in universe, kids consider him like as like a urban legend.
Okay. Well, we're going to look at some of the other art because some of what defines a comic book is the art style, or a graphic novel or a manga is the art style. So we're going to look at some of the other art that you were generous enough to share. So this looks like it's just a setting with maybe some of the kids that disappeared. It's a couple, mother and daughter on a nightstand on a picture, and then the same girl is sitting in clearly her bedroom.
Yep.
Is this sort of indicative of the type of art we can see, like the style?
Yep. So that was done by Danny because he's my artist, for the theme of thieves and everything. Color by Steve Dasgupta. who did like, a lot of the coloring and everything. So this is like taken from a panel inside of the actual issue. So each issue that I do sort of the cover sort of like reflects what's actually in the book panel wise. So I take a particular panel and blow it up to something that's more detailed and more, that's sort of like, embiotic of what the what's featured in like that issue per se. So this female right here, her name is Rebecca. She's one of the protagonists. That's her mother. That's in like the picture, her and her mother and everything. And if you can see right on the smartphone right there is a picture of the guy in a red suit. She is she's taken a picture of a wall that has like this guy in a red suit, because like I say, he's an urban legend in the universe. And they've they've drawn pictures on like the side of buildings of this guy. Some people think he's real, most people think he's not. And she's on her bed with her best friend, from high school. Her name is like Samantha. But like I said, this is like one, from one of the panels inside of the book itself. And the artwork is like, what people can expect to see as far as like, what's inside the book.
Okay, and we're gonna look at what happened? All right, so this is another image of Slender Man. Or Slender Man of the Red Jacket Man.
Yeah, the man in the red suit.
The man in the red suit. There we go. Mm-hmm. And what's the story of the smiley face cover? Well, the yellow thing that's up in the top right. I saw that in the other panel too.
Oh, okay. So that's a symbol that he carries with him. So that'll be revealed more, as issues come. But that's in relation, if you could see the color scheme and everything, that's sort of in relation to this figure here. So as we delve more into the man in the red suit's history, it'll be a reason why the symbol looks like how it does. The symbol is more or less like a surprise face with blood coming right down from from the top and stuff. That's sort of supposed to represent battle scars and everything, and also to represent that life is not always nice, and that's why he's in a surprise. Instead of him smiling, the symbol is more or less in a surprise mode.
Okay, and then last but not least, this was my favorite. It's a portrait hanging on a wall. It looks like a family from the 1800s esque, but then it looks clearly there's some blood spatter going on. Mm-hmm. From the image.
Yep. So yeah, some craziness going on in the issue and everything. Basically, as soon as you open it, we get some you get right into the story as far as the prologue. So that was where we were talking about earlier about how to what did I end up changing. So I had a whole prologue written, and then end up dumping that and putting the prologue to this into it. And this is, like I said, it's from a panel from something that a character does, and within the first few pages. And I thought it would be great to blow this up into an actual full-fledged picture and stuff to sort of represent what you're getting into. This is the standard cover. I do have a variant edition, but it's just limited, so I didn't include that. But this is sort of this is here to basically represent what you're getting into as far as the comic itself. You're not getting into something that's going to be superhero-ish, or for it to be a first issue. It's basically letting you know that there's some complex stuff going on.
And the level of detail, the way the signature would have been for art period from the time, mm-hmm. where you can see the signature, that is. That level of detail is nice to see, from an artist. I love that in covers too, when they show that level of detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
most people don't notice it, but then you zoom in on a high res, and it's just oh.
Yeah, I appreciate that you did that and everything. I mean, that's something that was put there for a reason. Wanted to make it as authentic as possible and as real as possible for for people that's just looking at the cover. That's one of the more popular pickings when someone does come and buy my comic at a convention and everything. Let me get the bloody cover and stuff. This image right here, this was from the variant cover. A lot of people like that too because it's a simple image. It gives you it defines like who the characters are, who the main characters are. You know, the two teens and a mysterious being right there. And it's more gives a more simple image of drawing you into the actual comic and everything. So basically, if I'm at the convention, I give them a different variety. If they want to actually get into something, to pull them in. Some people like more of the blood. Some people like, the simple stuff. But it's the same content in the inside, so it's meant to draw you in.
Okay. Well, since most of our audience listen and don't watch, I appreciate that you actually described what was on the image. That makes it very easy for them. But let's dive into the story itself. So, what would your 30-second elevator pitch be?
Well, like I said, two teens, a mysterious being. They're traveling through time to try to solve a mystery of why people are disappearing in the present. So just imagine a society where people just randomly disappear all the time, and it's been happening since the 1700s. No rhyme or reason, no closure. I deal with like the politics, the religion, and the culture that's dealing with this world of evanescence, is what they call it in world. Evanescence means disappearing, and this is the theme of thieves of of this comic book series.
Okay.
Was that 30 seconds?
Yeah, but close enough. So what is it that makes your series the theme of thieves special?
Well, as we talked about earlier in the conversation, I like to say that I love superheroes. I'm into the MCU. I like a lot of some of the DC stuff and everything. I love superheroes and stuff, but I didn't want to create something that was similar to everything that's out there. I see like a lot of independent creators still do the superhero stuff, and I'm thinking, okay, I can't really compete because everything as far as superheroes have been done. So I wanted to create something different. I wanted to create something that sort of speaks to, my feelings, my thoughts, and how what I think about like society, how kids deal with growing up and everything, how people look at just life, period. And I wanted to twist it up in like a science fiction type of thing. Like I said, I'm deep into like if you look at my comic, it's a mixture of Lost, it's a mixture of Quantum Leap, and it's a mixture of The Wire. So those may seem like odd pairings and stuff, but I have those type of elements that once you read it, you can really see how all those are big amalgams into like the theme of thieves and everything. The Lost references are basically like the mystery stuff. The Quantum Leap stuff is a time travel stuff, and the Wire stuff is sort of like the maybe politics and like the societal type stuff and everything.
Okay. The Wire was a good show back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So what tropes do you feel like Theme of Thieves hits the best?
I guess the biggest trope would be, talking about high school, hitting high school, trials and tribulations and stuff, and sometimes as a creator, you don't want to say, okay, I'm using this trope because tropes are, continue to always been used. But it's safe to say that when I'm writing these characters, especially like the younger characters, they're going through typical high school stuff, like getting a girlfriend and wanting to be liked in school, wanting to be accepted, wanting to go on dates and everything, and have like good relationships and stuff with like your peers and stuff, getting teased in school, getting ragged on and everything. Those are like certain tropes that a lot of stories go through that actually put out there. Then I'm actually putting my spin on and my voice on what I want these characters to actually say about that.
Okay. So what subgenre other than time or genre other than time travel do you think this comic fits best into?
Other than time travel, I would say like if you want to go into like I don't want to say politics, because politics is a heavy thing, and as we talked about, being preached to and everything. I'm trying not to do any preaching into into this world and everything. A lot of stuff that happens political wise happens on the peripherals, whether it's not the characters actually talking about like different stuff. You actually hear on the peripheral, like, the news station. So if I'm talking about something in the world, then you hear a news station talking about it. You don't actually hear the characters talking about it. Or if they're watching a YouTube channel, there's the channel talking about it, not the actual character itself. The characters are still going through their trials and tribulations. The newspapers, the peripheral internet stuff, all that's like surrounding it. So I would think the subgenre would be that's actually a really good question. I mean, I guess if you want to call it, politics and everything, then you can go on that route.
We're just being clear for you when you say politics, you're not talking about the modern American politics or global politics of Earth as it is now, but in universe canon stuff, and
Yeah,
that's always okay. Like you want the universe to feel real and lived in, and that involves politics. So we're specifically speaking in this instance, or at least I think you are, of as it applies just to your universe, which
yeah.
is different than ours.
Yep. It's totally different. How the politics of this universe, especially when it deals to how people disappear and the way people react, because politics is really a lot of reaction and people reacting to that. So when this whole disappearance thing that's continually escalating with more and more, people take advantage of. So you got like certain leaders in the universe and everything taking advantage of people disappearing. Okay, well, this is the reason why they're doing it, or whether people thinking they know the reason, but they're only doing it for to drum up support for their causes or whatever, when that's not really the case. Like I said, we got these characters trying to find out the real reason why all this is happening, but on the in like the present, people are taking advantage of this phenomenon, this evanescence that's going on. So my in universe deals with a lot of the effects from that, deals with like the religion, the religions that sprout from people disappearing and stuff. You have cults that are actually put together based on the fact of people just randomly disappearing, groups just disappearing and stuff. So you got like a lot of that going on in my stuff. I put a lot of layers in and into my stuff. And while it's going on, issue 3, I'm still building out the world a whole lot.
It also sounds like this could be adventure fiction, which I can dig.
Oh yeah.
You've got a male character, so you could almost call it men's adventure fiction, except for he's a youth, and you've got her with him. And I don't know if there is a women's adventure fiction, but just generically, like the idea of they're going on the adventure.
So yeah, it's definitely action. So as we go on, when they go on their adventure through time. So if you're a big or if you watch Quantum Leap, Sam Beckett, he traveled into different periods trying to right wrongs and everything. My characters do a little bit of that, but they encounter situations where they actually have to physically get into stuff. Rebecca, the female, in the that you see on the screen here, she's a martial artist and everything. So she's practiced a lot of like martial arts stuff. So while she doesn't really do a lot of fighting in her present and everything, she's going to find like a lot of skills that she learned are actually going to be beneficial to her in like the different travels and stuff. And as I said before, the guy in the red suit, he has like a allotment of different things that he goes about doing and everything. I'm doing like travel back into like the Salem witch trials. So I got like a few stories surrounding that, and they pop into like a just going ahead and like in the story a little bit, they pop into like the that time period. All of a sudden, they're looked upon as witches, and people are attacking them, wanting to take them down. So of course they got to fight to get out of that and everything. And then they pop into other different periods and stuff, going into different crazy situations. So they basically got to be prepared anytime. They got to be prepared for a surprise anytime they jump into like a period. So yeah, it's definitely going to be some crazy action going on.
So does their clothes change as they travel in time, or are they wearing what they were wearing when they started the journey?
So that's a great question. So in some instances, yeah, they'll travel with the clothes that they have on and everything, and then they'll adjust to the period that they'll try to find clothes that match the period that they're in. And then they'll find unique ways to be creative in adjusting to the periods that they actually jump into. So, but as far as the mechanism element, they travel with the clothes that they're in.
Okay. So do they have a way of trying to make sure when they appear on the other side of the time divide that they're not in the middle of a busy crowd?
Nope.
So they could displace people and end up sort of embedded in the middle of somebody.
Yeah. It's going to be
sorry about your grandma. Splat.
They could appear in somebody's living room. They could appear in the middle of like a crime battle and everything. It could be that's a fun part about writing this, because you can create so many different things and scenarios that they actually pop into, just like how Sam Beckett, he popped into different periods, and his favorite last words was like, "Oh boy," when he and then you get left with that cliffhanger on next week on how is he going to get out of this. So my characters are sort of like put into like the same instance. They pop into a period, so you're left wondering how are they going to get out of it, or how are they going to adjust, or how are they going to be creative in doing that. You would hope that they don't pop into like big crowds or anything like that, but things happen and people react. So my key is always how the reaction is to to these phenomena, to the to this science fiction that is because my world is not a bunch of superheroes or different craziness going around, but strange things have happened, and I'm always like dealing with how people react to that.
So are they going through space and time, or just through time? So like when they transfer it back in time, are they in the same location ish, or are they, if they were in England now, they might be in, I don't know, Scotland when they transfer, and then Egypt and wherever?
Well, so that's a great question. So far, they're relegated to different points in the United States, and there's a reason for that. That'll be revealed at some point in time. But yes, the mechanism is that they are traveling through like space and time, so they can't appear anywhere, just not in the same place.
So that comes up because, and the reason I thought to ask that one is because I'm writing a military portal fantasy that involves, a fantasy version back in time of Egypt. And so one of the things you realize is certain landmarks have moved. So like the Nile River isn't now where it is now, isn't always where it was. Like things like that shift. And so you could think where if you were, I'm on the beach, and well, you're not on the beach anymore. You're, several miles away.
Yeah.
If you go back far enough, that kind of thing. Is fun to factor in, or like time dilation if you're talking about space. You can be creative if you understand just some of the base science behind all of that.
Yep.
So all right, so let's talk about the main characters themselves. It sounds like there are the three main characters. So what can you tell us about them that makes them unique?
So Jason, the Caucasian guy over here, he's the one of my main characters. He's 16 years old. He's in high school. He's being bullied and everything in high school, and he's feeling like he's not only being bullied in school, but he's also being bullied at home by his dad. So his dad is pretty hardcore on him and everything, and he's basically trying to figure out who he is and what his place in life is. As a 16-year-old, you got so much stuff coming to you. You're trying to find your place and trying to find your people. His friends, he has very few friends, but he does have friends that he plays online with, online games and everything, and they do their best to like try to comfort him and get him in his like certain situations, but they tease him as well. So he's sort of like in a gump in a type of way where he's always being picked on. So I'm really interested on how this character just develops as he matures, when he starts being confronted with things that he didn't really consider, so that's Jason. Rebecca, she's a teen who actually goes through. She's real smart. She's popular, but not popular enough to where she is like could be like the prom queen or anything like that. But she's known to be tough. She's known to be real assertive into when she talks to people, and not so much authoritative, but real decisive in her movements and her speech and everything. So people take to her a different way. She has a best friend named Samantha who's a little bit more passive, and I sort of like go back and forth with them two on her or Rebecca not really wanting to go to parties because she doesn't really like a lot of people that go, but Samantha does like going to parties. So she sort of brings her, try to brings Rebecca along and sort of gets her out of her comfort zone. So Rebecca could be real stubborn as well. The man in the red suit, he's a forever mystery. You don't know who he is and what he is. And while the third issue hasn't come out yet, he's going to end up snagging these two, and taking them on like adventures, and they're going to learn a lot about who this mysterious being is, and why he does what he does. And the man in the red suit doesn't know a lot of stuff that he does or why he does what he does, but they all figure that out together, based on clues, little lost elements that I leave in different periods.
Hopefully, you give a more satisfactory ending than Lost did.
I love Lost ending. I'll never belittle that. That was a very, very, very good show.
Fair enough. What about secondary characters? Were there any secondary characters that were especially memorable?
Yeah, I have another one named Nakia. She's she first appears in the first issue, but she takes a little bit more of a presence in the second issue, where her and Jason actually go on a date. And Jason, this is the first time that Jason has actually run on a real date with a female. So he's real shy about it. But Nakia, she's really playful, but sometimes she could be like a user. So I'm sort of playing with those elements on how people can be manipulative just to get their own make their own reasons on why they do things, and sort of use people, but she's still friendly like Jason and everything. So she's a secondary character that I'm playing a lot of around with her and her sister Janelle and everything. They're going through some different stuff. And Jason's dad, his name is Ray, so he has some particulars because his upbringing was kind of rough, and he's sort of passing that down to his son. And I'm sort of showing how generational stuff can actually happen with families, where the habits and ways that they carry with them sort of get passed on. And I'm just trying to figure out if I'm just trying to have the character figure out whether he can stop that thing from happening all the time. So yeah, these are secondary characters, and I'll be introducing more within the story and everything, but these are ideas and things that I'm playing with so far.
Okay, so does your story have any bad guys, or is it mostly the mystery of the universe that is sort of the bad guy?
It's sort of like the mystery of what's going on. And right now people are not really questioning, because it's so much a way of life, the whole evanescence thing. They're not really questioning why it's happening. They just know how. They just know that this thing happens, and it's been happening for so long. Through the whole technology rage, when it started happening in the 1700s, it was very little technology going on, but it's been happening for so long that people are just just going about this as a way of life. So if you want to just consider that the enemy, then that would be the thing that needs to be resolved, and the antagonist of the thing. And like I said, I'm just slowly revealing or going to be revealing why these things are happening, or the characters are going to be trying to find out why these certain things are happening as the present tension escalates in the world.
Okay. So speaking of characters, it sounds like you put the people in your universe through hell, taking away their loved ones and such. So if they ever met you in a back alley and they knew you were DP bound, the tormentor of their souls and the destroyer of their lives, how do you think you'd fare?
I will probably be backed into a wall, put tied up and everything, and probably just send me, make my story right. That I know that's been done before. I can't think of a show or movie that I've seen that, but where the characters actually come to life and confront their creator.
Wasn't
But
that Ink Master?
I haven't seen Ink Master, but it's been done before in other stuff. Well, maybe it might have been Ink Master. I haven't seen that movie. If I've seen it, I haven't seen it in a long time. But I know it's been done where they confront their creators, and all of a sudden it's almost like you're sort of like confronting your God, you know, in a way. Actually, that's a really great story to really.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you started talking about it. That could be fun.
Yeah, to play around with that.
So let's get a peek behind the curtain. So were there any cool scenes or ideas? You mentioned a little bit about the prequel. So what can you tell us about that scene that you cut?
So it was going to be more sci-fi than what I ended up going with and everything. So it was more like I had like a bird, you know, I had like I had a reason why everything was happening, and I was going to start off with the what was going on, the reason why everything was happening, who was behind it, or what was behind it, or what could be the possibility behind it. But I scrapped all that and wanted to end up going with something more down to earth, or more historical base, as far as like the opening, to give people sort of like a tease. Because the reason why I didn't end up going with the scene is it didn't build much of a mystery. It just sort of said, okay, this is the elements that you're going to deal with in Theme of Thieves, and then go, you know, right into like the you know, teenagers and their stories and stuff. But I wanted to build like a teaser as far as the world, because Evanescence means a whole lot. It's really the whole driving force of everything that's going on as far as people disappearing. So I wanted to add that element in a prologue to sort of give people a tease on, okay, well, this is something I can keep going with, or they could hopefully keep reading.
Okay. So was there anything we've covered your universe? It sounds like a lot. Was there anything about the universe before we start moving the interview along that we didn't ask about the universe itself that you feel like is crucial for the listener or the viewer to know?
No, basically, yeah, we did cover a lot as far as that. I mean, that's basically the Theme of Thieves. The world of Evanescence, the in universe title of, you know, disappearing is called, you know, people call it Evanescence, or vanning out, you know, as they will call it in universe. So that's like the shorthand for, you know, what this thing is called. And like I said before, it's the driving force of why people are of how society is building to this eventual escalation. And we'll see where it goes.
I feel like there was a TV show that Fox did, because that's where all good shows go to die. But there was sort of like the opposite of this, where like people that had disappeared years ago just randomly started appearing. It's like the 4400, I think it was called.
Yeah, the 4400. Yeah,
It almost seems like the opposite of this. Were you watching that, or
I
did you
was
find it
watching
after?
that. It was okay, but a lot of that was made back in what, the aughts, or was it
Yeah, the early aughts.
yeah, the early aughts and everything. It was okay. It wasn't one of my favorites and everything, but I thought the concept was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then they had that one similar concept with the Alcatraz, the people that started, or that might have been part of the 4400, but like people from Alcatraz started coming back that had disappeared.
No, I think that was a different show.
Yeah, but yeah, that the same kind of
It was
theory.
on Fox, wasn't it? I forget
Yeah,
what it was called. Yeah,
it was one of the guys from Lost was in it. It was ironically
yeah,
the heavy
yeah,
that
yeah.
white guy with the curly hair.
Hurley. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yep. I forget what it was called, but it only lasted like a few episodes, because that was around the time when Lost ended. They had like a bunch of copycat Lost, you know, type shows that didn't understand what made Lost Lost, and really, you know, it did. Though, you know, the shows didn't really, you know, last. There was a 4400, I think. Well, that was one of them. But that did last for like a while, and then, like you said, that one where Hurley was in. But yeah. My you know, people think like Leftovers and stuff when they talk about, you know, my
oh, that's
stuff.
the religious one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the that was a 2% of the population disappears, and people have to deal with that. So while mine's is sort of similar to that, you know, I don't mind saying that, because Damon Lindelof is one of my favorite writers. Um, mine sort of like goes into like the historical aspects of, you know, why this thing happens. And then I also refer to when I'm in my pitches and everything, conventions, Endgame, Avengers Endgame and everything, Infinity War. You got like Thanos snapping the fingers and people just disappearing and stuff. So that's just to give like a visual of how this thing will happen.
So, like when these people disappear, is it like you said mid conversation? Is it sometimes mid driving? So, like it might be driving and they just disappear, car
Mhm.
crashes kind of thing.
Yep. Yep. That's what builds the tension in the world and everything. People are trying to find out, how to resolve it, its mechanisms in place on, how something like that would happen. But yeah, it could be a mid conversation, mid flight, if they're in a plane or whatever. But people have their guards up, put it that way, in this world.
I can think of some compromising positions people could be put in because they just disappear at an inopportune time.
That's the crazy thing about it, Jr. Is that I've thought about this, especially when Endgame came out. They had that last scene in Infinity War where it was this big thing where people started disappearing, and I was like, okay, well, what if you take that further and people will be in compromising positions? Disney would never show anything like that, but fortunately, I can. But yeah. It's different craziness and different creative ways you can put people in positions when this thing happens.
Yeah, there was another one where people would like the time would pause. It was on TV, early aughts maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and like the world would pause, and some people died because when everyone fell asleep for that short period of time, if they were driving a car or flying a plane or whatever.
Man, missed that one. I can't remember.
Yeah, I used to watch that with my mom, but I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, there's lots of with this concept, there's lots of room for shenanigans, and we'll just say
Makes it
so.
fun.
This is clearly part of a series because you mentioned episode 1 and 2 is the theme of thieves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how many episodes do you plan on writing, and where do you see the story going overall?
So I have scripts in mind. I wrote it up to like I didn't write the scripts out yet, but I have in mind like 24 issues. Um, that's just like a number at this point. If I end up getting to like the 22nd or 23rd and find there's more story to tell, it's a lot of stories you could tell in this universe, not just with these characters, but with these main characters. I'm thinking right around there. I do have an idea how everything's going to end, and it really just depends on how things go. I mean, I'm an independent creator, so my aim while I'm doing this self funding everything is to reach a point where I'm doing not I'm doing the actual story elements full time and not having to go out and sell and market and do like a lot of the business side of it. So once I get to that point, it can actually create more full time and everything. Then I think we'll see how far I can stretch some of these issues.
Okay, so is there any plans in your head to branch out into other forms of entertainment media? So RPGs, maybe video games, although that's a hard ask, I guess, because that is an upfront cost.
Mhm.
Actual like print books, like novelization, I guess.
Yeah, so with Theme of Thieves, I do like I'm planning on doing like short stories on my website of different things that happen in the world, not necessarily related to my characters, but things that happen like as far as like families and how they deal with like the reaction of like evanescence and comment on like the politics of the world and everything in universe and their reaction to that. So once I get enough stories together, I'll sort of create like an anthology novel, that sort of collects everything all into like one. And that's not going to have like, that's going to be written in like prose form and not going to really have like artwork from like different artists and stuff. That's just basically me just getting out my writer stuff, my getting off my writer, stuff, and without having to wait for creators to actually, I'm sorry, waiting for artists actually wait for the artwork to come back and everything, because that's one of the biggest things about writing. You write the stuff and then waiting for the artist to come back with the artwork and everything could be a little tedious and everything. But I mean, you want to make sure that the stuff is done right. And good thing my artist Dan Eek is, he does such a great job but I want to just speed ahead and create more stories. And like I said, I'm doing, through my website and everything, I'll have an opportunity to get that done. And like I said, if I do enough other short stories, collect them into like novelization form.
Okay. So let's talk about the art real quick. And we did hit on it when we showed the image, but what made you decide to go with color as opposed to grayscale?
Great question, man. Okay, you're on the point here tonight, here, Jr. I've when Dan initially came back with his artwork, I thought long and hard to not make it color, because the artwork was just standing on its own, and it was just such a good good look and everything. I thought, okay, do I want to spend the money to make this color, or should I just leave it black and white and just let the story just like stand on its own and everything? But it was just a aesthetic decision. I ended up getting some color back from from my colorist Alex Ziev, and she came up with some pretty good stuff. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll do this. I'll do this color. It's just a decision I ended up making. It didn't matter either way. They both look good to me, but I just ended up going with color because I'm used to comics in color and stuff.
So given that you have the black and white line art before it was colored, is there any point at some point in time to pick some of the good panels and make almost like an adult coloring book for some of your super fans?
So that's a really great question, because I've seen other artists do that with their Kickstarters and everything. That's something I haven't really delved into a lot, but that's something I can actually do, since I do have like the black and white stuff. I actually do have artists do like do like an adult coloring book, as like a different tier in my next time I do like a Kickstarter. So it's certain that ideas that I see other creators do that I'm taking to heart, and seeing that, okay, if I have the possibility to do it, because the artwork's done, is already paid for. It's another way to actually get more involvement and get more interaction as far as my work. So it's a really great way to do that. Reason to do that.
So each universe will have its own internally consistent rules of science, technology, and in some cases magic. So what sort of tech can we expect? Obviously there's time travel, but other than the time travel, is the tech on par with what we have now, or is it advanced or behind?
Well, right now the elements is based on real world technology. So there's nothing advanced as far as the story is concerned as of right now. Now in the future, once we start figuring out, okay, why this thing is happening, it may come in the past. But as of right now, none of the characters are dealing with anything that's like otherworldly or outside of like real world, like technological elements.
Okay. So then, you've written time travel, and that's obviously a form of technology, I'm assuming. So if you had the chance to travel through time, would you do it?
I don't think so.
Oh, why not?
It's while I'm fascinated by it and everything, it's something that, okay, if I knew I could get back, maybe. But if I didn't have if I was to time travel and go into periods where I didn't really have like the armory or whatever to handle that particular time and everything, I don't know how I would actually fare, because when you're in your present, you know how to deal with like your surroundings and all that stuff. When you're in the different if you're in a different time, and I'm assuming that or whatever, you have to deal with those people and those elements, in time and stuff. So just say, for instance, I'm a black man and everything, and I'm going back in time travel to like the 50s or something like that, or like even like the early 1900s or whatever, where they were still doing like lynchings like crazy and everything down in the South and stuff. So if I was to time travel to a place where I wasn't able to defend myself or give reason as to why I'm there and everything, have to deal with those elements, I would have to be certainly prepared for that. So
did you ever watch Reading Rainbow's episode about that?
they had an episode about that.
Yeah, it's called Follow the Drinking Gourd. And so the long story short was this black kid was like, oh, why do I care about what happened back then? And it was talking about history. And so sort of he's cursed and he ends up back in time, and he ends up, because they find him, they think he's a runaway slave. And it ends, and it was right when Roots was coming out when that episode aired. So it ends with, and spoiler for like a 30-year-old show, but it ends where he's strapped up and they're getting ready to, the overseer's about to whip the hell out of him. And suddenly, right as it hits him, like he wakes up back in the present. And it made me think like that was an impressionable show for me, because it started thinking like, what if you went back to the wrong time and they thought you were a witch or whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
You're just as likely to be, do you know who the character Tituba is from the Salem witch trials? If you read that, she was the slave that was accused of the whatever. So she made up stories to cover her own butt and was like, oh, it was the white girls, right? It's an oversimplification. Obviously, don't hate me, people, but like there are obviously times where, regardless of skin color, if you went back to the wrong time, it could end badly for you.
It could, like, hey, I mean, it's no offense or whatever, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy stuff happened in history, and people reacted in different ways that they don't react today. So, I mean,
we're a lot more civilized,
Say what?
We're a lot more civilized than we used to be.
You would think we're a lot more civilized, but 100 years from now, they may look at us and say, okay, they weren't as civilized as we are in the
I would hope we make some progress in the next 100 years. I would hope. So other than the man in the red suit, are there any other fantastical creatures, or it's just modern humanity?
Just modern humanity right now. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to be dealing with like fantastical creatures in this story and everything. I'm basically keeping it as grounded and down to earth as possible until I really get into like the reasons why a lot of this stuff is going on.
So then let's answer this next one hypothetically, because it always fascinates me. If you were going to write a story, and obviously not this one, but you were going to write a story where you had aliens or fantastical creatures, how would you go about creating them? Would you let nature inspire you, folklore, your nightmares, make something up completely out of whole cloth? Like, how do you think you'd go about doing that?
So I'm not a big aliens type person or creatures type person, but if I was to do that, I think I would let nature, like, sort of like, build from like the ground up. There has to be a reason why these creatures come from where they come from. So my story, if I was to write that, would be from a earth type of perspective, or from the ground up. There's a reason why these creatures or aliens or whatever, come to pass. So I would have to have some sort of history behind them, instead of just them actually magically appearing or just being there. There has to be a reason why this alien exists or whatever.
So for you, it's all about the backstory. You need a believable reason why
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's more delving deeper into you as a creative, like how you sort of visualize. So is there, aside from the comics that you're creating and the children's books that you're writing, do you have any plans to branching out to other forms of media on your own, like writing novels?
I mean, it could come to pass. Right now, this is like my baby right here, so I haven't really had time to think about other things. I said this on another podcast. I would love to get a crack at Knight Rider. I'm a big Knight Rider fan.
Oh yeah.
If I could get a crack at that show, I would do some things with it. I watch going back to watch a few of the episodes. That was a badly written show, but as a kid, I was just sort of fascinated with like the kid Michael Knight. He had a twin brother named Garth Knight. That was real. Really intriguing and stuff. But I would love to get a crack at that, because they tried to reboot it a few times to minimal success. I think if that got into my hands, I could work with it for whatever reason. I know that's like out in left field, doesn't have anything to do with like science, fiction or whatever. But I mean, again, unless you could talk about a car being science fiction, I guess that is. But I would love to get a crack at that.
Yeah. I mean, it made Hasselhoff a bit of a name, and he's still big in Germany. So
yeah.
I guess there's worse things to be known for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right. So clearly the interview is winding down, but before we let you go, was there anything about the theme of thieves that we didn't ask that you want to tell the audience?
It's right. It's while it's not in stores as of yet, it's still available. The issues are available on my website, so you could go to themeofthieves.com. You'll see it in like the show notes and everything. To go and buy the issues. This is something to try out. And I believe once people actually read it, you can either take it or leave it. For the most part, it's been doing really successful for the people I've sold it to, and I've been getting really good feedback. So it's a taste-driven book. It is for adults, for 16 or up and everything. It's not like, for, younger kids and everything. So when you purchase it, or when you go to look at it, because I do have a preview right on my website that you can sign up for. When you do sign up for like the newsletter and everything, you could get like a free preview, Ashcan preview, I should say, of like the first few pages and everything. It's a really good thing to actually, see if you can dig.
So when you say it's available on your website, are you only selling print copies or can they get PDFs? Because I know Comixology
Yes.
is a thing.
Yep. So you could get digital and obviously print and digital. Yep.
Okay. All right. So before we let you go, dear listener, I'd like to harken back and remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. And I guarantee you, anywhere you buy content, books, movies, songs, comics, there is generally a review function, and it helps the content creators find other audience members. So if you really love a thing and you want to help the creator keep doing it, leave a positive review and tell everybody what you love about it. And hopefully you'll find other people who are kindred spirits and you can sort of build your tribe together. So do your thing, people. Please be kind and speak your mind. But Mr. DP Brown, before we let you go, how can listeners or reader or viewers find you?
You see right on the bottom, if you're watching the YouTube page, or if you're listening, Dog Pound Brown, DWGPOUND BRON. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and also Twitter. So make sure that you are following me. Of course, right on my website, themeofthieves.com. You will find all my links as well. I'm also a co-host of the Nerd Cyclopedia Carbonate Bounded BS podcast. It's a Star Wars group. Every Wednesday, we're at 10 o'clock p.m. We're talking about anything Star Wars, from like the comics. We're talking about this new Obi-Wan series that's out right now, reviewing that. Anything that has to do with Star Wars, we're talking about that as well. We also on the channel do different other stuff like MCU content, and we'll be doing The Boys coming out pretty soon, reviewing that series. So make sure that you guys are subscribing to nerdcyclopedia.com. I'm sorry, Nerdcyclopedia YouTube channel, and also going to the Facebook page and Nerdcyclopedia, where we talk about different things right online.
So where did the dog pound part come from? I'm guessing that's not the name your mother gave you.
I'm a big Cleveland. So I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm a big Browns fan. So I'm a diehard Dog Pound Nation fan. So anyone who's from Cleveland knows what the Dog Pound is, because that's what we call the Browns. Browns fans and everything, Dog Pound members and everything. So I'm basically Dog Pound Brown. So DP for short.
I dig it. All right. So you can find us, dear listener, on Twitter at twitter.com/SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. That is blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can join us on Facebook, where all the shenanigans happen. It's facebook.com/groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, /groups/Blasters and Blades Podcast. You can join us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-and-blades, where as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on. And we greatly appreciate all of you that do that. You can also support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast. And I promise I will keep my co-hosts, Doc Cisca and Nick Garber, duly flooded with more material than they can read, because we can always read new things. So we have new stuff to talk about on the show. So thank you for sticking with us with your through the episode. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom.